Nigeria will be marking the Democracy Day on Friday, the 12th of June. June the 12th is remarkable as the day the election adjudged the freest and fairest in Nigeria was conducted, but was later annulled by the military government. TVC News' Uzon Naunoye came up close and personal with the former editor of National Concord Newspapers, Dele Alake, who was a close aide to Chief MKO Abiola, winner of that presidential election. Through the series, Mr. Alake spoke on the decision by Chief Abiola to run for presidency, the preparation for the election, the annulment, and the struggle for the return of democracy.
Thanks for giving us your time, Mr. Alake. You knew the man, MKO Abiola, up close and personal. Just tell us a little bit about him as a person that you dealt with.
The late Chief MKO Abiola was my boss. He was my mentor. He was the chairman of the company I worked for. That's the Concord Press. I was his editor. And I worked very closely with him for 13 solid years, 10 of which I was his editor, 5 in the weekly Sunday, and then the other 5 in the daily. So I had such proximity to him that afforded me the opportunity of an uncommon insight into his personality makeup. MKO Abiola, to me, in my considered view, was a very rare human species in terms of his generosity, which we all know is legendary. Some of us were direct beneficiaries of that generosity, and were also observers, very close observers, in the way he, distributed his resources. I wouldn't just say wealth, not just money, resources, time, energy, everything, all over the globe, not just in Nigeria. I followed him around the world. I met several heads of states through him, and there was hardly anywhere we went, in and out of Nigeria, that he was not dispensing resources. So he was quite generous as a human being. Secondly, he struck me as one of the most brilliant individuals, most brilliant black, man I had ever come across. His wit was unmatchable. His humor was honestly unassailable. You couldn't have a minute close up with him without reeling in laughter all through. And the humor was laced with logic, with the ground norm of the philosophy of life, anecdotes, lessons, and adages, interspersed with a lot of adages and proverbs, all to really teach you about the lessons of life, the philosophy of life, your orientation, your disposition to issues, people, and places and events. 3, he was such an accommodating person. He could bend over backwards just to accommodate the other person. And I went with him, with my colleagues, to so many places. And we went in some of the most decrepit of dwellings that I, even as young as I was and as non-comparable with him as I was, I shuddered from going inside those dwellings, decrepit places. But MKO was in effortlessly, without qualms, without scruples, and he would go in there and hug the most indigent of human beings. And you could see that those things oozed out of his heart. They were not things designed to woo the people or to hoodwink people or to curry favor. They all came from his heart. He was such a phenomenal personality. He was such a unique person that when we started June 12 and we were coasting home to victory, I personally felt that it was a spiritual moment for Nigeria's emancipation
What was it like when he told you and your people that he was going to run for the president? What were your thoughts at that moment?
It was actually in December of 1992, one night, about 2 a.m., that he called me. He placed a phone call to me, my house, and it was a Friday night. I was supposed to be producing. Usually when you are producing a weekly, a Sunday paper, Friday will be the production night, and we used to do 2 editions. Then you do the first edition Friday night, second edition Saturday night. But I was home because I wasn't feeling fine. I was a little bit indisposed. My deputy was in charge in the office. So when I got his call, and he said I should come. And I said, Chairman, we called him Chairman. I said, Chairman, I was home, I wasn't feeling fine. That's why I wasn't in the office. That he should call my deputy if he had anything editorially, operationally. And he said no, that this was a personal discussion. I should call. I said I couldn't. I was really indisposed. And he said it was very important. He was going to send his driver. So he sent a driver to pick me, and the driver came with one of our photographers, the late Ishola Asho. They came to pick me at home, and I got to him, and he asked me to sit down. He said, Dele, that he was going to run for the presidency of Nigeria. This was in December of 1992. And I said, Chairman, that was a tall order. Given the scenario politically, given the landscape, given the entrenchment of the military then, and given the public perception of the then drivers of the militocracy that we operated as being reluctant from leaving the stage. It was common knowledge. Everybody knew that IBB had been dribbling and all that. And so it was really quite obvious that these people were not ready to leave the stage. So I told him all this, my reservations. And he listened. And at the end of it, he said, look, as at that time, he was one of the few prominent, resourceful, capable people left in the horizon, in the political horizon, to give a challenge to the military. And that if he failed to do it, that history would be unkind to him. And he said, and I retorted, I said, Chairman, you and I know that this man wouldn't leave. Yes, he's your friend, but there are things that are beyond you as a person. He would not leave. What would happen if you contested, you won, and he refused, the military refused to leave? He said then Nigeria would not be the same again. And I had nothing, no reply to that. So I said, okay, sir. And that was how we started.
You know that MKO Abiola at that time was a friend to all of the
yes,
top men
of course
in the military.
I knew.
And he may have had an insight. It is possible. Do you have an idea whether he had a conversation and a promise reached, an agreement reached, go and run, we'll back you up?
No, to the best of my knowledge at that time, he didn't have any conversation, and he didn't have any premeditated agreement with them. He summed up the political landscape, which he also expressed to me. Don't forget that as at that time, as at that late 1992, most of the political actors had been headed into one detention or the other. Don't forget that there was a primaries from which the late General Yaradua emerged as the SDP presidential candidate. And who else was it? Chiroma or somebody else emerged on the platform of the NRC. And that was the primaries that Alhaji Jakonde contested. And there were about 13 or 14 presidential aspirants at that time. And of course, the primaries were so problematic, violent in some instances, was so suffused with rigging, that the military cancelled the primaries and then headed all the actors into detention. Mm-hmm. Most of them were in Lekki here. There was a detention place in Lekki. And that sort of cleared the stable. So, and that was what MKO referred to when he said he was about the only standing pillar left with the capacity to confront the military at that time. So it wasn't as if he had any pre-arrangement or something like that. No, he didn't.
All right, Mr. Dele Alake, a former editor at the Concord Newspaper, speaking on the philosophy and struggle for a return to democracy by the late Chief MKO Abiola there.